Episode 261 of CppCast with guest Basit Ayantunde, recorded August 15th, 2020. The sponsor of this episode of CppCast is the PVS Studio team. The team promotes regular usage of static code analysis and the PVS Studio static analysis tool. In this episode, we discuss plain old data types. Then we talk to Basit Ayantunde. Basit talks to us about the STX Library and other open source work he's done. Welcome to episode 261 of CppCast, the first podcast for C++ developers by C++ developers. I'm your host, Rob Irving, joined by my co-host, Jason Turner. Jason, how you doing today?
I'm all right, except for this cloud hanging over me of smoke, that is.
Yeah, what's Colorado like these days?
Well, it's just a bunch of forest fires. It's standard, wildfire season, I guess, out here. So it's the other day, yesterday I couldn't even see the sun at 6 p.m. It was so dark with smoke.
Are they out of control, or are they fairly well controlled by the fire department?
I don't know. I mean, they've had to evacuate a few areas, but it's all, just kind of normal. It's funny because I recently tweeted about this. Just the extreme weather like this is just part of living in Colorado. We get blizzards, monsoons,
forest fires,
wildfires. Yeah. We don't get earthquakes. We do get tornadoes. It's fine.
Okay. All right. Well, at the top of the episode, I'd like to read a piece of feedback. This week, I saw this tweet from Patrice Roy, who we've had on the show, I think, 3 times before. Haven't talked to him in a while.
Wow.
But he wrote this tweet saying, not commuting and working from home and working all the time makes my podcast backlog grow bigger by the day. I miss listening to CppCast. It's on my short list of must-listen podcasts. And I saw this follow-up reply from Bjorn Faller. And he said when he commuted, he listens to a lot of fascinating podcasts, but now there's no commute, so little listening time. But then an odd thing happened, long lunch walks, bicycle rides, whatever, and podcasts again. Only many aren't airing. Some are on summer breaks, which, I guess some podcasts take off for the summer, not us. But yeah, I thought...
Why don't we do that?
Yeah, maybe we should do that. But I did kind of think about this, and that's something that I should really do. I also, don't listen to many podcasts anymore because I don't have that commute into the office, which I know you have not had for a long time, Jason.
Well, that's been 11 years, yeah.
Yeah. But I should do more walks or bike rides or something because, that commute time just winds up being more work time or just sitting around the house, and I should really be better about that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we'd love to hear your thoughts about the show. You can always reach out to us on Facebook, Twitter, or email us at feedback@speakcast.com. And don't forget to leave us a review on iTunes or subscribe on YouTube. Joining us today is Basit Ayantunde. Basit is an undergraduate at the University of Ilorin, Nigeria, where he majors in mechanical engineering. Basit has 4 years of experience writing industrial software, both as a contract software developer and intern. He is one of the C++ Now 2020 scholars. He contributes to open source projects like Tensorflow and CMSys, and authors STX and a number of open source C++ libraries. Basit, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So I've been curious about this because I saw on your bio, that you're a C++ Now 2020 scholar. We didn't talk a whole lot about C++ Now because, it was canceled this year, right? So Were you planning to come to Aspen? How did that all work out?
Yeah, I was planning to come, but the conference was canceled. I was even about preparing for my visa and stuff, so it was canceled, so it disrupted my plans.
That's unfortunate.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of curious, you're majoring in mechanical engineering, but you've done so much, software development work. Are you learning C++ as part of your curriculum in mechanical engineering, or is that just something you became interested in on your own?
I actually became interested in it on my own during my first year. That was when I started learning. C++.
Very cool.
The last engineering program that I was really familiar with, everyone had to learn Fortran in their first year, which just makes me sound old. I don't know if that's still true or not.
Actually, I did some C programming in my second year, but it wasn't like really intensive.
Right.
All right. Well, Basit, we have a couple news articles to discuss. Feel free to comment on any of these, and then we'll start talking more about your STX library and some of the other open source work you've done, okay?
All right, sure.
All right. So the first thing we have is this blog post titled "No More Plain Old Data," and it's all about plain old data or pod types and how the feature to do the type trait to detect a pod type is actually being deprecated in C++20, which is I don't think something we've talked about before, but there are now the type traits for isTrivial and isStandard layout. And the concept of pod types are kind of going away, I guess, but you can think of a pod type as both a trivial and standard layout type, and that's what this blog post is basically going over.
Lots of good examples in this one. I found it pretty helpful, actually, because when I saw that the isPod was being deprecated in C++20, I'm like, really? Why do they take the nice things away from us? But this article gives enough background for it to really make more sense.
Yeah, definitely. Do you have a chance to read through this one, Basit?
Yeah, I also read through it. I think it's a very good idea. Separating the trivial and POD types, because basically those POD are more like trivial types, but with really, really very constrained constructors.
Yeah.
Okay. Next article we have is from the Visual C++ blog, and this is about the Address Sanitizer support in Windows with Visual Studio. And we've definitely talked about this one before, but they keep adding and expanding on the Address Sanitizer functionality in Visual Studio. And it now supports x64. I believe when it first started, it was just for x86. It also has debug build support. And this is a really good post if you do want to try out the Visual Studio Address Sanitizer, because it goes over how to set it up properly, what some of the known issues are, and just seems like a really helpful post. And I know I did try this out when I think it was first announced, and I had some trouble, but I'll have to take another try at it now that they've added x64 and debug and see if I can have more success with it now.
Yeah, this will be a little bit of a mental shift for me because, I mean, for so many years now, I've been using Visual Studio, and I'm like, you know what? I really need to run this through Address Sanitizer. Mm-hmm. All the projects I work on are cross-platform anyhow. So I just
run it in Linux.
Yeah, I just run it in Linux. I have to remind myself, wait a minute, I should be able to actually do this in Visual Studio now.
Right.
I also like this comment. I just want to point out that they said, we have fixed bugs in our tools thanks to customers who were early adopters and building large internal systems like Office. I think running Office with Address Sanitizer probably counts as an effective test.
Yeah, definitely.
that's a big product.
It's a very big product. Yeah. Basit, do you have a chance to use this? And are you a Visual Studio user or a Linux user?
Linux.
Okay. All right. And then the last post we have is Meeting C++ 2020. And there's now a list of accepted talks and definitely a couple changes to the conference this year, which I guess we should expect. They're going to a single track as opposed to, is it normally 3 or 4 tracks? I think normally 4.
Four tracks over like 3 days. This looks like a single track over. Actually, I don't know how many days it's over. It's 11 talks.
Question. So it's definitely not one day.
I don't think so.
Yeah. Yeah, but single track now, and there are going to be options to buy online tickets. And I believe the plan is to still have some in-person conference goers, but it'll probably just be, local people in Berlin. We still have to worry about COVID, even though I think Germany's numbers are fairly low these days, which is good.
Yeah, I can't go. At least not at the moment.
No, I mean, we're not even allowed to travel there at the moment. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Basit, we mentioned a lot of open source work that you've done in your bio. Could you start off by telling us about your STX library?
Yeah, sure. So STX is a set of error handling and utility extensions to the C++ standard library. It was primarily intended to address a few shortcomings or features that we feel would be nice to have in C++. So we have libraries like the monadic, optional, and error handling libraries and the backtrace library, which actually make working with C++ easier.
Right. That's I was planning to ask about that because I did notice you had your own optional implementation in there, and I'm like, well, optional is in C++ 17. So what makes your optional implementation different?
The primary concern was with C++ exceptions, especially if you're in the operating systems on the base system side. So to like be a big drag for you. Our optional type uses the fail fast and customizable abandonment mechanism that we call panic. So with my experience in the base system software, it is much more desired. And some toolchains like Extensor, you don't really even have a standard exceptions mechanism. So it can even be very heavy for some embedded systems platform.
Okay.
Could you tell us a little bit more about? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Okay. With the monadic operations too, you can like it's the error handling logic. You can separate them like as in pipelines instead of writing them manually. So it actually makes even error handling easier than stored optional.
Yeah, I was recently working with optional myself and thinking it's felt like a lot of boilerplate to be like, if this, then do this operation. If the optional is not set, then, do this other thing or whatever. So the monadic operations, go ahead.
Steve Brown wrote a paper about that for STL's optional.
Right.
But I haven't really been tracking its progress.
Yeah, I know that there's I have no idea what the progress is on getting that standardized.
Me too.
Can you tell us more about the panicking? Don't think I've heard of other libraries with, it says runtime panic hooks. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
The runtime panic hooks are like customizable hooks. Hooks are like runtime mechanisms that used to customize behavior of functions. So you can, if you want the library to like fail fast abort, you can set it to abort the panic instead of like causing the whole program to like immediately terminate it to just abort instead. If you want it to log to disk instead before terminating. So it gives you, because there are some mission constraint platforms. For example, the Mars rover. If you are launching into space, you don't actually just want it to abort mid-space,
right.
mid-mission. You might want it to log to disk, so you'll be able to fetch the reason for the abort and other error reports. So you can do that with the panic hook. I'm assuming that any behavior you want, once an error occurs, you can do that with the panic hook.
Is it like a global handler, like set terminate or whatever, like that kind of thing?
Yeah, exactly. Like that. Both results and optional, the report to it.
Interesting.
Is this library only for C++ 20, or could you use it with earlier versions of the standard?
Initially we had C++ 20, but we had to remove some C++ 20 features like the concepts and some other C++ 20 specs features from it, because most of our users were using C++ 17.
I'm still kind of curious about your panic handler, and I'm curious if it's like thread safe or what happens in like a multi-threading situation if the panic handler is called.
Yeah, it's actually thread safe. We intentionally make sure that it's an atomic operation. So all the interactions with the panic handler, they are atomic.
Neat. Yeah. Okay. Now, I've got the documentation up on my screen here, and it looks like you are not afraid to use constexpr. So is constexpr supported throughout the library?
It's just for the result and option type, not throughout the library.
Okay.
Can you also mentioned backtracing here. Is that, to produce stack traces so you can kind of debug what went wrong in the case of a panic?
Yeah, that's for the panic handler. So once you can also customize the panic hook to give you a detailed backtrace once the panic occurs. For example, if you have a 6segV, you can, especially for beginners, it's very difficult to trace exactly where it occurred. So the backtrace library, you can use it to know where the 6segV occurred, or the SIG, which is dereferencing a null pointer or an invalid pointer. So it's actually very useful for that purpose.
Yeah, definitely.
So you said you're a Linux user when we were talking earlier. But does the library support Windows by any chance?
I have some of our contributors have tested on Windows, so I'm very sure it works. I also have test sheets for it on Windows.
Okay. So like you just mentioned signal handlers. That sounds like something I don't think can work on Windows. And I just realized at this moment, I've done all kinds of signal handling code on Linux. I've never even concerned myself with the question on Windows. I have no idea. So do you know what that story is? I know you said your contributors have worked on that, but is there signal handling type code for Windows as well?
Yeah, it's cross-platform.
Okay.
It uses the C runtime, so there isn't really a problem with that.
Okay. And backtrace similarly? Does it work across platform?
Yeah, both Windows and Linux only.
Okay.
Okay.
I also noticed your library looks like it's got some awesome documentation. Like it looks pretty clean if you look at the generated documentation you have. And I was curious what you're using to generate your documentation.
For the documentation, I'm using Doxygen.
Okay. I've heard some people complain. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, you can go on.
I heard some people complain that Doxygen isn't really keeping up with C++ 17 and C++ 20, and I haven't used it myself a whole lot lately, so I was curious if you ran into any of those problems.
Yeah, it's not up to date with C++ 20, but I didn't run into any issue with C++ 17 support. The only issue I ran into for C++ 20 was with the concept type. Concept. So it treats concepts as variables. It actually gives good documentation of them. It's not really adequate source level information.
Okay,
I also tried ClientDoc and various other documentation tools, but they didn't really give me the right amount of source level documentation as Doxygen.
That's interesting. I don't think I've ever heard of ClientDoc.
Yeah, it's still a work in progress. It's not yet complete.
Okay. Do you know, is it
with Clang 11?
Is it is it part of Clang? Oh.
Clang 11.
Who knew? There's always some new tool to learn about in the Clang suite of tools here.
Yeah. Today's sponsor is the PVS Studio team. The company develops the PVS Studio Static Code Analyzer designed to detect errors in the code of programs written in C, C++, C#, and Java. Recently, the team has released a new analyzer version. In addition to working under Windows, the C# part of the analyzer can also operate under Linux and Mac OS. However, for C++ programmers, it will be much more interesting to find out that now you can experiment with the analyzer in online mode on the godbolt.org website. The project is called Compiler Explorer and lets you easily try various compilers and code analyzers. This is an indispensable tool for studying the capabilities of compilers. Besides that, it's a handy assistant when it comes to demonstration of code examples. You'll find all the links in the description of this episode. Basit, how long has the library been available, and are there any applications using it in production code?
It's been available for 3 months now, so I've not been up to date with the community to even know which projects are using it for now. But we have a very small user base for now. We're still experimenting and trying to add more features.
Okay.
That's pretty good. 278 stars already on GitHub for a project that's only a few months old.
Yeah.
So are there any other features of STX that you would like to mention that we have not talked about yet?
Okay, about the Doxygen documentation, I had to write some JavaScript and HTML and CSS just to get a very meaningful documentation that's it's readable prior to the other messy one.
Okay. Oh, I did notice that you're using Absil, and I'm curious what features of Absil you're taking advantage of.
Yeah, so for the backtrace library, the STX backtrace library is more of a wrapper around Absil's backtrace library, which Upsell's backtrace library is very low level and can be quite difficult to deal with. So STX is just a wrapper around Upsell's stacktrace library.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
I didn't even realize Absol provided a backtrace library.
Yeah, I don't think I knew about that either.
For the backtrace libraries, I've tried quite many. I've tried lib unwind. I've tried lib backtrace and many others before I finally settled for Upsell.
That's interesting. I mean, we just had the author of lib backtrace on 2 episodes ago.
Oh yeah, Ian Taylor.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's usually C build tool, which makes it very difficult to deal with.
Okay. So you give a much more high-level C++ kind of access to backtrace reporting then?
Yeah.
I wanted to ask about some of your other open source work. You have done some contributions to TensorFlow, is that right?
Yeah.
Could you tell us a little bit about what you've done there?
For a TensorFlow project, there were this ARM Cortex-M processors. They have this specialized SIMD and hardware accelerated instruction set, which we are trying to take advantage of for deep learning computations for these really, really constrained embedded devices. So it was really an exciting learning opportunity that will bring a lot of value to businesses and people. So my contributions were to implement some of these kernels and computation graphs that were to run on these tiny devices. So yeah.
Okay, so is that TensorFlow or TensorFlow Lite? I think when we talked a lot about TensorFlow Lite when we had Andrew Selly on the show.
Yeah, they're under TensorFlow Lite Micro.
Okay.
It's specific TensorFlow Lite Micro. TensorFlow is divided into TensorFlow GPU, TensorFlow Lite, and TensorFlow Lite Micro.
Oh, okay.
A lot of tools going
I didn't know
here.
so many variations. Are there any other libraries you contribute to that you want to talk about?
Yeah, I also contribute to CMSys, the CMSys I mentioned earlier.
Right. Can you tell us a little bit more about that, CMSys?
Yeah, so it's like a backend for TensorFlow, which is the one that actually runs the computation. So these are mathematical operations. They're also for the SIMD instruction sets. So it's more closely tied to assembly. So we use the ARM SIMD instruction set to perform the computation on it. Yeah. So the statistical and analytics function, just write them for the platform.
Well, I do notice here also on your GitHub that you've got several small projects that are related to hardware. So, and this seems to then also tie into what you were just talking about with your contributions to TensorFlow. It seems you have an interest in this low-level small hardware kind of thing.
Yeah. I've been trying to learn more about operating systems for about 2 years now. So I basically started from writing drivers. So very low-level drivers. I'm writing them for the small, tiny platforms.
So you said you're currently majoring in mechanical engineering. How far into your degree are you?
I'm in my penultimate year now.
Okay.
4 out of 5 years.
So no chance you're going to switch to computer science at this point, probably.
No, at all.
It does sound like you do have a really deep interest in hardware, operating systems, C++, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Okay. I know you had an internship at Goldman Sachs over the summer. I wanted to ask how that went.
Yeah, that was a really, really big opportunity for me. I really got to learn about the finance sector and how they write software. It's totally different from the normal normal developer-facing software. So, yeah.
Do you have any recommendations for people who are looking for internships?
I think the biggest recommendation I have is not to give up, because rejection is part of the process. I spent about 2 years searching for internships. I couldn't really find any, and the best people you can reach out for help is your network. You have to try to meet more people. You never can tell who can help you in one way or the other.
And was this an internship that you participated in remotely, or did you go to a Goldman Sachs office during this time?
Remotely.
Oh, okay. Is that, was it only remote because of, the current conditions with the pandemic, or would it have been remote either way? Do you know?
Yeah, due to the pandemic, it's normally 10 weeks, but we spent 5 weeks due to the pandemic too.
So you are definitely the first guest we've had on who currently lives in Africa. Was your location in Nigeria at all a problem or an extra hurdle in trying to find an internship?
Yeah, that was like my biggest hurdle. The problem wasn't like really finding an internship, but like finding people to like sponsor you out of the country or like have you do it remotely. That was the biggest hurdle for me. And most people don't want to hire from Nigeria because they have this impression that most Nigerians are fraudsters and all those kind of corrupt behaviors. So it's really made it difficult.
I'm glad you're able to get one.
Yeah. So when you had been accepted for coming to C++ now, had you already gotten whatever visas you would have needed?
Yeah, it was like terminated. My application was like terminated. Trump, I think he ended a law that they should stop issuing J1 visas or something. So my visa application was terminated then.
Oh, okay. That's unfortunate. Yeah.
Hopefully we can try again next year or something.
Yeah. Do you hope to be able to come to some of the C++ conferences next year, or are you going to try to apply to them?
Yeah, I do hope to. I'll try to apply again next year. Okay. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Hopefully I'll be there and we can actually meet in person.
Yeah.
I also, back to your open source projects, I did notice that you have a Patreon. Is that right? Did I get that right?
Yeah.
All right, cool. So, people can contribute to your help, encourage you to keep working on these projects, I assume.
Yeah, sure. I would really appreciate that.
All right.
Very cool. Is there anything else you'd like to go over before we let you go, Basit?
None for now.
Okay.
All right.
Well, it was great having you on the show today. Definitely keep up the good work. I'll encourage listeners to check out STX and check out your Patreon to help support your ongoing development.
Definitely.
Thank you.
Make sure we have links to all that.
Yes, definitely make sure we have links to all that. And where can people find you online? I know you're on Twitter a lot, right? So what's your Twitter handle?
Basit_Ayantunde.
Very cool.
All right. Make sure we have a link to that as well.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, Basit.
Thanks for coming on. It was great.
Thank you. It was nice.
Thanks so much for listening in as we chat about C++. We'd love to hear what you think of the podcast. Please let us know if we're discussing the stuff you're interested in, or if you have a suggestion for a topic, we'd love to hear about that too. You can email all your thoughts to feedback@cppcast.com. We'd also